Welcome to the episode of the First More podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Smiley. I'm pleasure to announce my guest, Jeremy Hartman. Known Jeremy for several years now. I think we first actually connected through Elite FTS and one of the Swiss symposiums, at least face to face. Jeremy has kind of done it all from a powerlifting and strength and conditioning perspective, high school, high level powerlifting, both as a competitor and now more so as a coach. And he's presented at Swiss. He's gotten a Lifetime Achievement Award. He's got National Powerlifting Coach of the Year Award. So, I mean, we were talking a high level coach, high level individual. Jeremy, I appreciate you being on, man. How are you doing?
Good, Brandon. Thanks for having me, man. It's been a big fan of some of the stuff you're doing out there with your athletes and lifters, and so it's a pleasure to talk shop to you today.
Absolutely. So to get into it really quickly, what first drew you into powerlifting and being a strength coach? Like, what was the journey to get you where you currently are right now? What was the why behind all that?
Yeah, why behind was I had a youth coach at the time. He was starting up a wrestling program and thought I'd be a good athlete, and I was in fifth grade at the time. Didn't really understand what that was. I said, sure, I'll try it. But he started off with strength conditioning before we started with the whole wrestling program. He did that preseason with everything, and Brandon, he was doing all the stuff. He was a metal fabricator, so he welded up more than half the equipment that was around. So we were pushing prowlers before there were prowlers. We would run up and downstairs bleachers with weights in our hands that he had welded together for us. He had different sleds that he had put mountain bike tires on from his son's bike that he welded together. And we were doing upside down sit-ups with the moon boots. We were doing Russian push-ups off chairs at the ground, plyometric push-ups. And this was all great stuff like preseason. And it was tough. And it was, I don't know, I just got immediately drawn to with everything. And I did that. You want to talk about a base? And I always mention this when I talk about it is 3 years of that GPP base of all that stuff over and over, plus the wrestling conditioning, the calisthenic work, everything like that. Then you want to talk about being introduced into the weight room, 8th grade, 9th grade. Man, your body is completely set up for that. I mean, you have such a tremendous base of everything ready to go. And I made tremendous gains in the weight room. I'm looking at my friends, they're like, how are you making all these gains? I'm like, didn't you guys run up and downstairs with bleachers and with weights in your hands for the last 3 years? Or, weren't you running sprints or carrying somebody buddy carries and wrestling conditioning and rope climbs and, all this calisthenic work? And they were just dumbfounded. I just started making gains. I just fell in love with it.
Yeah. I mean, as a former wrestler myself, I remember doing all that stuff in high school. Well, I think it was like always the first or second week of like, we would basically let school get started. We would try to take that first, maybe that second week to try to just find kids. Cause at the time Terre Haute didn't have a youth program. We would just try to find kids that we thought that would work well in wrestling. Maybe they had some kind of athletic background or they weren't playing football. They were going to be able to do something athletic. And as long as we had numbers up there, then we would at least cross our fingers and we would just recruit kids to come out to the track. And like you said, we would be carrying each other, doing stuff upstairs, a godly amount of like push-ups and like partner inverted rows and just like the weirdest stuff. Looking back, I'm like, man, what we did was probably pretty stupid.
Yeah.
But like you said, if you started back in August and wrestling season doesn't start till like end of October, I think that's around when it starts now. I mean, that's a good solid 12 weeks of training for kids that have basically no actual training knowledge or information. That is a good GPP introductory base to at least get them physically ready for the demands that are in wrestling. And then obviously wrestling practices are just pretty tough in general as well, especially doing all the calisthenics and stuff like you mentioned. So I think it's very interesting that those of us that have been in the wrestling world, that's probably the number one thing that I think we attribute when it comes to like getting into powerlifting or whatever is that GPP that we built for several years, because wrestlers are always in incredible shape year round. And that makes it a lot easier to get into strength conditioning as a coach and or as a powerlifter in our case.
Yeah. And Brandon, I took those, those 3.5 years of all that GPP work he gave me year round. He trained us year round with everything. And then I got to the end, had some great success in my high school, looked around at colleges for the wrestling scholarship wise and everything, but I just fell in love with the training. And I got introduced Vic Voinovich, who I actually coach both his sons now in strength conditioning. They wrestled at the University of Iowa. He was my coach at the time, and he trained with Louis Simmons a little bit. And so he got me introduced to, he taught me box squats in high school, sumo deadlifts. He taught me how to, what a progression was, what it meant to actually put together a weight training program. And Vic stayed with me. And again, all those years of GPP work and lead into that. And I just looked around and man, we got into, I said, hey, I think I'm kind of done wrestling. And he encouraged me to go the powerlifting route. And, we went to my first meet. My second meet was teenage nationals. No idea what I was doing, but we got put out there, and then I met some really good coaches along the way. And then I got to go down and train with Louis Simmons at Westside Barbell when I, really didn't know exactly who he was. 17 years old, 18 years old at the time with everything. And my career for powerlifting just started taking off more and more from there.
That's awesome. And so from being a competitive powerlifter, what led you to wanting to coach others in powerlifting? I think a lot of us that do it, I don't want to say we segue out of it because our competitive years, at least high level competitive years, are maybe coming to an end. But I can't remember who I hear saying quote this, but coaches just love to coach, and that gets them into coaching even at a young age. So what kind of drifted you into creating, your online coaching business and in-person coaching business as well?
Yeah, I think it was just the great success I had, getting in with those lifters very early on. Again, I met some great people, Louis, a lot of people in the Cleveland, Ohio area who are very successful competitive lifters. And then I had my own success, being on a couple world teams, getting to travel around the world to compete for powerlifting, the nationals and stuff I had some college lifters at the time who I just recruited, just friends with everything, who ended up being All-Americans, All-Americans, top 8 finish with that. And then when I got my first job as a high school strength conditioning coach, I wanted a lifting team right away, and I started coaching those people. And then I, came down to the Indianapolis, Indiana area. And again, I was trying to change a school program around and show you can win with these kids, because the morale was terrible at the school I was at. That was part of the reason bringing me in to really change everything. And so I was like, no, I'm going to show you guys you can win with these kids. And that was part of the lifting program. Some of I did it for free. I was helping those kids out because they were the kids that were working extra hard, the kids that were showing up for the optional lifting with everything. They just kept showing up. So I said, hey, I'm going to take you to the meets, but this is how it works. So if I'm going to do this with you guys, and didn't charge that first group of kids with anything. They're still with me, 12 plus years now later. Still my athletes. Shelby Morse, she just won the Open Nationals for USA Powerlifting. I've had her since she was a 8th grade volleyball athlete, asking how much the barbell weighed when she walked in. So I think it really boils down to paying it forward, because again, I was blessed at that time to have a person, a mentor who's still in my life like that today. And so when I gave him the coaching, I was like, man, this guy changed my sports career. Vic Voinovich, obviously a big part of that too, changing my, wrestling career with everything. And lifting had such a tremendous impact. You want to share with everybody. You want to show that stuff, and being able to travel around the world, be with Louis, meet all these high-end coaches, the competitive lifters that I was training with, the foreign coaches I got to get to know with. And, even the coach from Norway personally trained me for a little bit online before there was online training. I just think you group all that together. It's like, why don't you want to share that? Why don't you want to help others get the same stuff that you had? Why is there another little Jeremy Hartman out there who's begging to be helped, and you can help them?
Absolutely. I freaking love that, man. That's the paying it forward part, I think, is incredibly important, especially in more of a quote unquote niche area like powerlifting. There's, like you said, there's so many people that just don't even know it exists and or how it operates. I think it's social media has certainly helped for sure, but I still think there's a lot of people that have that untapped potential. They need somebody to just literally tell them and show them that they care, that, hey, this is something that you could potentially do great at after sports being done. And a good example is we actually have a kid he runs cross country. And unfortunately, I think his cross country career is coming to an end because of ankle and Achilles and issues. And he's had multiple surgeries, and he can just not get to the race pace that he used to be at without excruciating pain and having issues. And doctors are trying to shut him down. And his parents are actually genuinely worried. Like, all this kid has done is run distance, and he was like 8 years old. He does not know anything else. Now, he was coming to us to try to offset that, and we were doing a really good job of, all off season, things were going great. But once he started hitting more hills and stuff, he started to see a little more problems. And I think his career, unfortunately, is unfolding and coming to an end. But we were trying to relay to mom that, hey, he's actually one of the few cross country runners that is not afraid to push weight and to train hard. And so if he's looking for an outlet, not that I'm make him do powerlifting, but if he wants to just get stronger and build more muscle and keep coming to the gym, like, he should keep doing that. His journey in the weight room shouldn't stop because his running career is over. If anything, his running career should catapult him to long-term fitness, loving the weight room, so that when his time with us is done, he now has something he can fall back on to either relieve stress, take care of his body, think about all the long-term things for the next 30 to 40, 50 years of his life that we want kids to understand it's not just about the performance side. So I 100% agree with you. Seeing that happen in real life is really, really interesting. Going more on like your coaching philosophy, what is your like core coaching philosophy when it comes to developing your strength athletes? Everyone talks about being conjugate or DUP or block. I guess, how did you kind of come across the philosophy that you have and that you currently implement with your athletes, and kind of explain how you use that and implement that on a day-to-day basis with your strength athletes?
Yeah, my first training started off with simple linear periodization, and then Vic Voinovich introduced me to dynamic work in high school. I didn't quite know what speed work and maximum effort work was, but that was the basis of everything. When I started training with Louis, I got to see it directly head on, how he was training his competitive lifters, and also how he used the conjugate system with his athletes as well, with speed and dynamic, with maximum effort day repetition work. So that was heavily influenced. But then as I got into my career more, and I started traveling around the world, and I started working with a coach from Norway, and I was talking to the Russian actual competitive lifters themselves. The Ukrainians were very big. The Chinese lifters, very good bench pressers, Asian lifters at the time. So I started getting some of their programs sent to me all in Excel back in the day. I had to download translator pages and stuff to understand what they were sending me before we had all this crazy stuff now. So I was looking at all that, and I saw what was missing. I was missing a little bit more of the technical side with everything. I was getting very strong with stuff, but they were practicing the competition lifts a lot. Boris Chico, obviously with Chico's routine, squatting, benching, deadlifting multiple times, high volume work. So you saw a lot of the lifters who were using that at that level, or modifications of that. So I'm like, all right, what am I missing here besides the speed and dynamic? So I started implementing more heavy volume training, more multiple, event training, where I was actually practicing my competition lifts more often, which went against conjugate style a little bit. So that really helped me get more technically sound. It helped me with, at that time we we're using single ply equipment. That was the only type of powerlifting there was no raw. So then you had to, train with that stuff a little more frequently to get better at it. And, then I obviously started diving into Olympic weightlifting too. It's a big foundation, super training, Mel Siff, Veroshansky, all that stuff that you and I have read throughout all the years. So then you start looking around with everything, and I saw what was missing in my program. And as I got better in mine, I didn't go away from conjugate. I still kept that as my emphasis, especially in the off season, but I still kept my competition lifts in more. I'd train those in a little bit of a linear periodization. So to answer your question right now, my philosophy is it's a mixture of both. We'll do speed and max effort works when I see that my athletes need it, my competitive lifters. We'll use linear periodization when I think we need more practice. Sometimes we'll throw in a little bit where I take the assistance work away, kind of like a small op routine. And for our listeners out there, that's where you're practicing benching, 3-4 times a week, squatting 3 or 4 times a week. That way they actually get more, and my lifters will notice after the more sets and reps we're packing that in, and I'll dial their assistance work away for a little bit, Brandon. It gives them more feels of, okay, I'm doing this, or hey, I'm noticing this with my lifts. Hey, now that I'm squatting, I'm getting a feel for what it means to be better. So mine is a combination of a little bit of conjugate and I guess linear periodization involved. And I think simplification, I got too fancy, too much with all the max effort, crazy work I was doing. When I simplified what I needed, what worked for me. And I guess to answer your question, that's with my athletes now, is conjugate more based in the off season a little bit, but then linear periodization mixed in, a little bit of Smolov and Chico as well. So we're practicing the competition lifts, and it's just done tremendous for us.
That's awesome. I think a big takeaway people should take away here is that, number one, you have a phasic structure. Like, there's not just DUP 52 weeks out of the year and you're squatting, benching, and deadlifting several times every week, 52 weeks out of the year. And at the same time, you're also not, like you said, going a la Westside to where it's a different box squat good morning or deadlift variation every single Monday. Like,
Yep.
You are looking at what needs to happen from a seasonality perspective in terms of when they're planning their competitions, obviously. And then you're using you're biasing, I guess is probably the better word. You're biasing the system that's going to be more beneficial for the individual in front of you based upon their competition history, injury history, etc., to elicit that response. And I think, you can correct me if you think otherwise, but I think powerlifting now has drifted so much down the specificity rabbit hole. And while that is important, especially from the beginner perspective, I would think that a lot of beginners getting into it, once you've got the general technique down, you know how to squat, bench, and deadlift well. It doesn't have to be, perfect, but really well to where you have the very basics mastered. Exploring other variations during your off season is the best time to make what I like to call freebie gains, because if you find a variation that drives your other lifts that you've not done before, and you can run that for, say, like a mini Smolov cycle or whatever for 6 or 8 weeks to drive your bench press up with saving your shoulders in the process or whatever, that's a huge net win. And I think a lot of newer lifters are afraid to experiment with that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, Brandon, I see too many lifters, what you were just talking about with them, with too much specificity. They do real well for a short period of time or even a moderately period of time. then they either stop making progress, they end up getting injured, or, all the above happen because they haven't built. Ed Coan talks about this, one of my good friends, about building that suit of armor on. That's what you get with the assistance work, where you're putting slabs of muscle on, building stuff around all the joint stuff to protect all those areas. And again, so we do a lot of assistance work. That is something year round. I'll take it out a couple times, like I said, when we're running some small ob or some modifications where we're doing some more main lifts. But the majority of the time, we are constantly building assistance work. And if you look at my lifters, we've had very high end lifters lasting for a long time. Jared Martin, we just chatted with him. He just got back from China. He squatted 1,025, weighing 297. He deadlifted 848 on a stiff bar, not a noodle bar or anything like that out there. But Jared, I train him a little bit differently. He actually does we do block periodization a little bit, where I train him on a certain lift. Like we just talked about, you mentioned that they'll find certain exercises. So Jared, in his off season, we do a lot of higher bar and close stand squat for him. We do a lot of feet up to develop the upper body muscles because he's got very good leg drive. And believe it or not, one thing from Louis training with the conjugate system is I will do some more good mornings, some RDLs. So he's not traditionally deadlifting year round, but then as we get closer to competition, we will put those lifts back and more in. We'll do a lot of deficit deadlifts with him, and we'll run those, Brandon, for about anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks before I maybe make some changes into something on there. So he's on a little bit different periodization. I don't do a lot of speed max effort, just never responded to him well. But I do a lot of, sometimes, like you said, like training around the deadlift. So he's not deadlifting year round where it's specific. We're doing modifications. We're doing, hey, Jared, I'm seeing this. Hey, you're not getting enough leg drive on this. Hey, let's give your lower back a little break. Let's pull sumo for a little bit on here to work your hips and hamstrings. And it's done very well, keeping him injury free. It's done very well making progress. It's been good, fun variations in the off season. And it's obviously led very well into our competition lifts.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you're talking about somebody that can squat 1,025. Like you get somebody at that level, their training should look vastly different than somebody that's been lifting for just a couple of years, because that systematic fatigue of being able, like, he can squat that means his training weights are consistently 6, 7, 800 pounds, every single week. And you can't squat 3 times a week if you're squatting that heavy. There's no way you're going to maintain your body in one piece to have a longevity based career, which to get that strong, you've already had to been trained for a damn long time anyways. And then you factor in that if you squat that much, how that also then affects your deadlift, and then how your deadlift affects your squat. I think from the frequency perspective, once people get stronger, I don't think they look at the accumulated fatigue long term of what's coming and how that goes. They just continue to push that volume and wait for the volume to do the work. And like you said, if you can find good mornings or RDLs or other variations to drive that lift that are going to be less systematic fatiguing, so that you can still squat relatively heavy, because doesn't matter what squat variation he does, it's going to be heavy as shit when you squat over 1,000 pounds. I think a lot of people lose sight of that.
Yeah, that's I'll give an example like we just talked about there. That's why reason he does the higher bar, closer stand squats. It gives his shoulders and his rotator cuffs. They're just going to get beat up, like you just said. You mentioned the accumulating fatigue over time. So we can't do low bar year round. It just beats him up too much. We've had some pec and shoulder problems. So we've gone to a lot of higher bar, close stand squats. Now, Brandon, if he does want to squat twice in a week, let's say we're doing a little bit of volume on day one, and right before he deadlifts, before we ever deadlift, we always do a bench variation, maybe a squat variation. He's doing a safety squat bar again to save his shoulders from all that pressure and weight. Like you said, he's squatting, 6 to 7, 800 pounds year round. So again, it's managing that correctly. So I'm not beating up his shoulders, not tearing up his chest muscles. So that way he's able to come back and bench press. So we just found those variations to do well. The feet up benching, we struggle a little bit with the upper body strength. So I've taken his legs out. We've done a lot of feet up work with him lately, still creating a small arch. And that has really progressed well when we start putting his feet back down the ground. Because, again, we've gained that upper body strength. And it's saved his lower back, too. Like you mentioned about accumulating fatigue. Well, if you're arching over and over and over again, when you're squatting 800 pounds and you're deadlifting 700 that week, this is when a coach comes in and can really point some stuff out. Hey, let's do this. Or, Brandon, I have a plan for him one day. And, the way he's feeling, or I can see him warming up, I'm like, all right, we're going to change this. And we're going to do this and this just because of what I see already.
Yeah, that auto-regulation part's huge at that level. That's a game changer. So that kind of gets me to what I also want to kind of ask you is, for you, what's the difference about coaching, say, a 14-year-old world record holder versus a seasoned record holder, somebody like Jared?
Yeah, Well, the 14-year-old, we got Claire Mainous over here, world record holder in the bench press. She weighed 132, 14 years old. She bench pressed 172 pounds, and she's benching over 185 right now. So with her, I keep her training very simple. We do a lot of linear periodization. If I am doing let's say we're doing a 2-board press with her, something that's a little bit from a traditional bench press, I will run that for, again, anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks. So she has accumulation in there, so she can kind of figure out how that 2-board really works. And by the second, third week, her body gets going. And by the fourth and fifth week, she's kind of made some really good progress on that part. Same thing if I give her a higher bar close stand squat to work quads and keep her back straight, more neutral posture. It takes her a little bit longer to kind of figure that out apart. And then we can start making gains on her routine. With Jared, it's really a week to week and almost sometimes a day to day thing. How are you feeling? What's going on with this? When you mentioned about him squatting big before we left to China, Jared was, when we hit 1,025, we were supposed to deadlift around 830 that same week is what I had planned. Brandon, we hit an 804 and I cut him off right there. That was about it. He was still fatigued from, 5 days previous to that, his squat with everything. With Claire, I can push a little bit more assistance work. She can work out 5 days a week, where Jared, I have him just, 4 days a week. Maybe he's got a recovery day where he's just going in, walking and stretching out. Her, I can push more of the assistance work. We can do multiple sets and reps, I can do 8 to 10 sets on assistance work on there, where that's going to beat the heck out of Jared's, his elbows, his shoulders, his knees, and everything. So younger kids, I push the assistance work up a lot. I teach them the technique and the lifts first for about the first 15 to 20 minutes, and then we do a bunch of assistance work afterwards. Jared, I get the main lifts in, and I'll pick just 2 or 3 assistance exercises that I think he needs, simple 5x5 routine on there, and then I'll cut him off on that part.
Awesome. I think something I really like that you touched on the 3 to 5 week wave of using the 2-board, for example, is having 1 or 2 weeks where it's basically just figuring out the movement. And then the following weeks are actually about building the actual movement. And I think from a powerlifting perspective, for sure, people have so much hate against conjugate based work because they see all this variation of is that you can't learn the movement or you don't know if it's going to transfer. And I think that's where most people understand is that while Louis, yes, usually changed that variation every single week when he was at Westside. That's how it was whenever I traveled there as well to train with them a couple times, is that it was always changing. But he was also working with the top end elite guys that were already squatting over $1,000 and whatever. So yes, they do need that. And they've probably got enough training history where, like you're talking about with younger people or people more newer to the sport or newer to lifting just in general, having multiple weeks, and I've done this as well whenever I do conjugate, is that either if I don't run the same variation for a couple weeks in a row, I'll have an A and a B week where A week will do one thing, B week will do the other, and then we come back to A week and we've already got a framework from what we did 2 weeks ago. Let's try to not only break what we did, but we now have a movement pattern somewhat established, and we can build that up over the long term rather than just throwing I think people just think that you're just grabbing an exercise out of thin air and we're going to try this. And that's not the way that it works.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll give an example with that, Brandon. We were doing, with Claire, we're doing illegal wide grips, and that's where you have your index finger outside of the rings a little bit. Louis was big on that for chest development. She was just getting very slow off her chest, but had a tremendous lockout. So again, when you said it's not like I'm picking something out of thin air. So I picked dumbbell bench. It's okay. It'll help with chest and everything. Dips will too a little bit, but you got to put a barbell in your hand. There's only so much weight you can hold on dumbbells. So a lot of high volume. I'll give you an example, 6 sets of 6, we're doing on ultra wide bench press to help the bottom part of her lift off for a while. And once she had developed that, Brandon, we went back, like you said, we went to a traditional bench press for a little bit. And all of a sudden that chest work from all those after 2 or 3 weeks of traditional benching, by week 4, she started breaking her all-time records and she was faster off her chest because we had developed those muscles and I saw what she needed. And I used that tool for that. Just like a mechanic uses a certain tool for a certain part on your car, I use that for hers to help develop it over time. And then after that block, when we switched and just started building her other one, then her regular bench started taking off. I think with the younger lifters too, Brandon, one thing to keep them going is I train her like an athlete. She does box jumps. We do high pulls, we do clean pulls a little bit, a lot of single leg stuff for her. Not saying I don't do that with Jared, but a lot more lunges, a lot more split squats with her. A lot of dumbbell work and stuff with her. And that's just, again, helped tremendous out. And it keeps them engaged. It's something fun. It's something new. I'll challenge them. Like you said, hey, we did 3 sets of 15 last week with these dumbbells. Here's what we're going to do this week. Or, hey, you jumped on this height this week or last week. Let's see what we can do this week. So it's been good and fun variations that have a meaning behind what I'm giving them.
Awesome. So let's talk about Shelby a little bit. So she's been with you for, I think you said, over 10 years.
Yeah.
So what's it like watching someone like her develop from literally the ground up to becoming a national champion? What's that process look like as a coach? And obviously you're still working with her and helping her do awesome things.
Yeah, that typically doesn't last a long time, especially in powerlifting. You see a lot of the younger kids coaching, switching from coaches, or somebody will, hey, I'm going to go over here and do this. It's just been tremendous because, like I said, she walked in as a volleyball player in 8th grade, didn't know how much a barbell weighed, didn't know anything about it, but I started having these optional times, and she started showing up. So, as a coach, you get more excited. You want to help that athlete. Hey, they're putting more time in. I want to put more time into them. It's just part of this is my love, my passion. Somebody else is starting to notice that and share that. And she just had some, she had some okay success early on, but she really built herself up into it. And now it's to the point where I don't have to sit there and watch every set and rep. She's gotten a little more independent in a good way where, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, or hey, I hit this, look at this video, I'm seeing this, what do you say? So we can have a direct conversation about it. We talk about, hey, I want to start hitting like a heavy single before my, next meet every single week. So normally we don't do singles the last couple of weeks on a simple linear periodization. But Brandon, we were talking, she goes, hey, I want to have a little bit heavier weights hit. I want to practice that single. So we would work up to a single, and then we might do some volume training, 3 sets of 3 afterwards. I'm like, okay, I'll meet you in the middle here, but you still need to keep your fitness up. Just can't keep singles and cut off. You're not a Jared Martin at that level. So we kept her volume up during that time, and she hit a single volume, next week on pretty much all the main lifts. And then we had a tremendous, we started making really good progress into it. It got the heavy weight on her back early on with everything. And then we go to the meet, and she, has a tremendous day, goes 8 for 9 PRs, American record bench press, wins the open. So it's been great from where I had to coach every single set and rep and tell her what, put a 2.5 on next set, to now where she knows the system. She can make modifications just like I had to do for my system. We can meet in the middle on some of these grounds, and we're still making progress, and she's still setting PRs without changing weight classes or gaining weight or anything. And most importantly, she's still healthy and ready to go.
Yeah. And that's a testament to, in my opinion, having a good coach. It's obvious that over that decade, like, yes, like you said, early on, especially when you start talking about working with younger kids, like I do every single day, like you got to hold their hand early on because they're completely new to this. But the end goal should be the point where, yes, you're still providing the structure, maybe even the program, but there's a lot less quote unquote hand holding and more of like they're having the autonomy of making the decisions. You're there to consult and provide educated based decisions with them and help them navigate that process. And then that's what ultimately, like you said, over 10 years, that's what's going to make a really good long-term lifter because someone has guided them every step of the way. I mean, 10 years, that's a long time. There's not too many kids that last 10 years in anything, let alone when you talk about getting into some kind of strength-based sport. So hats off to you, man. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. We've had a long journey together, and she's just done a tremendous job. And just to piggyback off that, I'll give you an example. We were at nationals, and she hit her second attempt, and you only get a minute to decide. And we're going after the American record for bench on her last attempt. And she said everything was good. She goes, hey, I just need to fix my setup a little bit. She goes, put it on. We're good. And right then and there, we knew what we needed to work on. Her and I went back real quick in between attempts, just tweaked one little thing, goes out there, and she smokes it. So when you have that type of relationship, that type of communication, I mean, her dad, her mom, and I, we've traveled to 3 different countries together, all the nationals together, and we just have a good relationship where we know what each person needs to put the best number on the platform.
Yeah. And I think having somebody in your corner that you trust really does a lot for that, especially when you're talking about powerlifting and you're taking a attempt that you've never done before. Having you obviously, as an individual and a lifter, want to have that confidence, but when your coach and the people around you are also giving you that confidence and showing that they actually care about not only you as a lifter, but you as a person, your confidence on meet day is considerably higher. And I feel like I can relate with that because I know when I broke the world record at the Arnold, when I was going to go for it, Dave Tate was actually on the stage then. I mean, Dave doesn't go to many powerlifting meets. I still don't know this day why Dave was even at that meet. I'm being honest with you. And Dave was like, hey, the platform is literally shaking. Like this platform should not have this kind of weights on it. It's not stable. So if you want to hit this, when you unrack it, when they give you the squat command, you have to say 1001 while you're holding your breath to let everything settle and then squat. And he's like, because when you're going down, the weight is still moving. And so like that's something that, like, I never thought about. But Dave, somebody that I trust, respect, obviously knows a shit ton about squatting, benching, and deadlifting, saw that from the sides and had the respect to come up and tell me that, like, hey, this one thing is going to make or break whether you get this lift. And he was 100% right. Like, it was the right weight decision. But having somebody like that I trusted to give me that feedback is probably why I hit that weight, not because I think I would have probably missed it had I not, but I didn't realize it the whole meet. So I can 100% relate with something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
On again, going back to kind of the wrestling a little bit, kind of talk about your wrestler Peyton and the scholarship that he's earned. So how does that relationship work with somebody like him? Does he does powerlifting as well, right?
Which one? Peyton
Hornsby?
Silas was my Silas Stitz, yeah. But
Okay,
I got two Peytons. I got two other Peytons that I got scholarships to right now, yeah.
Okay.
So,
yeah. But I guess from a wrestling side, kind of talk about how the strength training, how you're looking at that with your wrestlers and what might be different there from other sports in terms of, like, we kind of talked about just the general calisthenics and general physical preparation, but mainly going into like your off season and your in season, what does your actual strength training piece look like from a seasonality perspective with your high level wrestlers like that?
Yeah, we've had a lot of great success with the wrestlers. One thing was awesome. I got to go to the Olympic trials this past year with my Greco-Roman wrestler. Didn't quite make the Olympic team, but had good stuff over there. And with these guys, it's at the high school level. Whatever they're going at practice, so if I have, hey, coach, we climb the ropes for X amount of times after practice, or hey, we end up doing a whole bunch of calisthenics. So I'm always modifying my workouts a little bit. So even though I have some stuff in mind that, hey, it's supposed to be mostly a lower body day today, or hey, it's mostly supposed to be an upper body, hey, we got to do this, way to do this. So I'm modifying stuff, but I train them differently from what you see. Brandon, you and I come across all the junk online all the time. I give the kids strength training. When they come to see me, we strength train. They're already doing conditioning. They're already doing running. Why am I going to put them through circuits? We might do something fun at the end or something like that to challenge them a little bit. But why am I putting them through circuits? They're already going through that. They're already going through round robins. They're already wrestling. You have a wrestling background. You know all the stuff that we went through. So I'm giving them what they haven't gotten at practice. If you look at our top wrestlers, Zahid Valencia, who just won the NCAA, or who just won the world championships, Kyle Snyder, who's done it, David Taylor, head coach of Oklahoma State, they all strength train. They go in the weight room. They're not doing circuits. They're not doing battle ropes and all this other stuff. They're actually strength training to help them out. So my philosophy is big on that. We're doing heavy compound lifts. We're doing 5 reps and less, unless they're a younger wrestler in there. We're hitting heavy triples, heavy doubles. There's certain times of the season, the off season, we're hitting heavy singles as we go through. So I train those guys very heavy and very hard. They're coming to me for that. I don't want to put them through conditioning. A lot of my guys, Brandon, when they come to me, they come, whether it's after school or maybe they had, how these wrestlers are, they have practice, they'll come lift with me and then they'll go do a private. So why am I going to put them through conditioning when they've already had 2? They're going to have 2 wrestling practices, or like, hey, I got it's Friday Night Live or whatever at the academy locally down here. I'm like, all right, then we're not doing any sled work today. We are simply doing strength training because I know you're going to be wrestling live and conditioning on your own. So we stick to basics, benching, lots of pull-ups, but I do them weighted. It's not just sets and reps and just body weight. A lot of my wrestlers are, my good ones, they're doing well over 45 pounds for strict reps and sets on, pull-ups. Silas Stitz, who's one of my competitive lifters and also wrestled in Division I at Kent State University. Silas was 3rd in the state this last year. I mean, he's done pull-ups for sets of 3 and 4 with over 120 pounds. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. And it's funny, Brandon, because at the end of the season, I strength train those guys hard. A lot of coaches that I've seen, they will start backing their teams off when it comes to sectionals. And that's okay if you have a kid that maybe he's not going to, go forward or anything like that, obviously. But I always tell my wrestlers, we're prepping you for state. We have sectionals, regionals, semi-state, and then the 4th week later, we have state. Unless we got a tough guy coming in at sectionals or regionals or semi-state, we are training hard all the way through. I know you're going to make this out, trying to be cocky or anything, but you should be on this part. But I strength train them hard all the way up until state, and I start backing off just a little bit. So let those other guys stop at sectionals, let them start peaking out, or some coaches stop them a week before. I'm like, that's up to 5 weeks where they weren't training hard. All my guys always do better when it comes to state level meet.
Yeah, that's great. I think any sport just in general needs to understand that, especially if you're even remotely good. If you know that you're going to make it past the sectional based area, you got to train through that for sure. And especially with wrestling 4 weeks later, like that's a long time away. If you got that kind of level wrestling, even the wrestlers that I have I think we've got one kid, a heavyweight kid now that went to state last year. He for sure should make it back this year. I think he's going to be probably a top 5 placer. And we literally just had that exact same discussion. He's like, "What are you recommending?" I got him at the end of last year, unfortunately, so I caught him at the end of wrestling season. So I was kind of playing, maintenance relief there at that point. But now we're at a point where he's wanting to know what to do in season. I'm like, "Hey, you're already coming in 6 a.m. one day a week and then coming in the evening the other. Just move them to both in the morning." And I was like, I'll adjust the volume as we needed based upon how your season's going and how, once you start getting the thick of it, we'll back some of that volume down. But, we still got to lift heavy year round because you're giving up 30 pounds to heavyweight. He's only like 250. So like, you've got to be stupid strong year round because we know you're going to make it back to state. So we got to keep trying to get stronger all the way through January. And then we can start pulling back to try to quote unquote peak you and make sure that you're fresh for state. So I was like, you really, from right now, I mean, it's, as of this recording, it's end of September. At a minimum, we have at least 4 more months that we're going to need to be able to put some strength and size on you. Yeah. So like, stopping now would be a really, really dumb decision. And luckily he's the hard work. Again, as you know, wrestlers are usually the hardworking kind. If you tell them to do something, they're probably not going to tell you no. They're probably just looking for validation of why they can do more.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I always have to burn them out. That's why I said maybe a fun little circuit at the end for these guys, or I give them a challenge that's really hard, or if they're not wrestling that night or actually have like a day off or something, then, we'll push them on the sled. We'll get them hard on that stuff just to give that mentality and everything. But it really goes back to the strength training. And, we got another guy in here, 16 and under, national champion for cadet nationals, Peyton Ormsby. So Peyton was second in the state last year. He went out and won the 16U nationals. He's training with me now. And again, him and I talk about, hey, besides, we're junior season coming up and senior year, but we're getting you ready. He's getting some big time offers from some Big Ten universities. And I said, just remember, you're going to be, he's not going to be a 20-year-old senior, 19-year-old senior like some of the athletes we've seen. He's going to be an 18-year-old. But I said, when you get into college, you're going to be 18 years old wrestling against 25-year-old men. So I said, besides prepping you right now, you want to continue, and maybe even after college, he's very talented. But I said, this is what we're going for. I got another guy, Peyton Shutley, who's he was second in the state last year as well. He's getting ready. Indiana University gave him a great scholarship coming up for wrestling, so he's coming into his senior year. And same thing, like the assistant coach at Indiana University actually was one of my first athletes ever from Fort Wayne Carroll. His name's Riley Fever. He's a 4-time NCAA champion for Wabash University, the first guy to win 4 national titles for Division III wrestling. But Riley and I talked like, hey, I need, Peyton Shutley, now that he's working with you, I need him getting ready for us coming in. Like he's got to be physically ready. He's very good wrestling with everything, but he's not physically there. So Shutley started coming over working with me, and he goes, I've noticed a tremendous difference. He goes, I'm finishing much easier with stuff. He goes, I'm not getting banged up. My knees used to get sore, my shoulders from hand fighting. He goes, I'm actually feeling a lot better. He goes, I'm taking guys down better. He goes, I'm scoring better. So he goes, all the little things, when he's on top and he's doing tilts and leg riding, he goes, all these little things are like, they're getting a lot easier with stuff, man. He goes, this is amazing, because Brandon, you and I have seen, unfortunately we have a lot of high school coaches that strength coaches that are, gym teachers or PE teachers that they're not in love with what, like the way we are with strength and conditioning. And now that I'm putting these guys through stuff, they're seeing the results. Hey, I'm finishing better. Hey, I'm feeling better. Hey, I'm not as banged up as much. Hey, this is amazing how much this is starting to transfer. I'm really feeling the difference over here now.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's going away a little bit, but I feel like, at least in my area, maybe not so much in your area because you're closer to Indianapolis, but I think the old school wrestling mentality of that they don't need to strength train too is still a really big misconception that's kind of passed around. It's been passed around from years ago, but we clearly know the benefits of it. And for me, trying to get luckily the wrestlers that I have all like been in the same little network. So, they're either wrestling each other or they got a friend or whatever that's now getting their butt handed to them on the strength side. And they're like, man, I can't take this guy down as easily anymore. What are they doing differently? Where they're still, I would say a vast majority of high school wrestlers are still a little bit leery of strength training because they're trying to like fit themselves into that weight class box. Do you ever have any kind of resistance with that?
I do, but as the wrestlers start getting stronger and they can start handling those people better, and the parents see that, then they're okay with them starting to move up. But yes, it's still a stigma in there. It's still something that you and I dealt with as we wrestled and went through. But yeah, with the kids, like, hey, well, I want to cut down here. I'm like, but hey, we've done all this work. You are actually strong enough to compete at this next weight class over here. So it's okay to move up. And the parents see that and they're like, hey, he's actually, they like, oh, hey, he's actually strong enough. The coach will say, he's actually, I thought I wanted him here, but he actually looks better over here. So it's once you get that strength training in, once you get the kids that are handling those weights real well, and then handling that weight class real well, especially in the off season where I don't want them cutting a lot. When parents ask me, I said, nope, it's off season. I said, I'm not the wrestling coach, but we're doing all this work like you're doing with your guys. Let's keep this strength going on. If it's a couple pounds, it's super 32s or something big meat, I'm all for that at that level. But other than that, let's keep getting the strength on. Let's keep moving them up. They feel better. And I've never had a wrestler come back and say, oh man, I really should have cut down. All of them say, I'm happy I went up, or happy I was able to gain some weight, or hey, I love this. I'm making strength gains and going up on here. So it's really a good thing for all the guys to see. And it's still something you and I fight every day, but it's definitely a headway when you get them stronger.
For sure. All right, let's kind of go towards some of the unique experiences and mentorships you've had, because you've had around some of the really great coaches in the strength world. So I've been around Louis, but so for other people listening, what was it like working with Louis Simmons at Westside for as long as you kept traveling over there and seeing him and getting help from him?
Yeah, so I was traveling back and forth in 2001 to 2010. I would say a frequent visitor. I wasn't there for every workout. If I get in there once a month, that was good, or once every couple months. But I was around kind of that golden area when he had the Chuck Vogenpols and Mike Rosario's, Jerry Brodovics. He had a lot of good guys. Rob Fusner was another one, Kenny Patterson. So all these old school lifters that if you buy the VHS tapes, they're on there with everything, Brandon. I know you got a copy somewhere. I got a copy somewhere still. So it was great to see that. I got to see, most importantly, as a coaching part, how he organized his system, how he organized his guys, how he kept that culture going, the intensity going, how everybody had a job. I learned how you got 6 guys coaching one guy. Like you said, when Dave Tate pulled you aside, somebody would get done squatting, they would pull somebody aside over here, taught them about what they needed to do for their next set. I saw how everybody was organized, helping out. I saw when they all got done maybe squatting together, they would break off. This guy would be working on this area, reverse hypers. This guy would be on glute hams over here. This guy was on back work over here. This guy was actually on, like Dave Tate was on abdominal work during that time. So I got to see how he picked and choose, like you said earlier, about it's not just us picking an exercise for conjugate. We'll just do this. No, there's got to be a meaning behind it. Same thing when I saw they bench press. Some guys needed more upper back and lat work. Some guys needed to go at heavy tricep work. Some guys needed chest work. And maybe they were staying there doing ultra wides, or they were doing high rep dumbbell benching. So it was good to see the organization part. It was good to see how he put that into play. And then the competitiveness, there's nothing better than being competitive. I love the training more than the competing, honestly. So just being around that competition mode and that training mode, I loved it. So I got to see how the max effort worked. It wasn't just max effort. It was a competition day for a lot of guys. There's a lot of smack talk and a lot of money thrown around, egos and everything too. But I got to see how he organized those guys. I got to see how he dealt with different people with, it was a young coach in my early 20s, when I was there, even in my teens, but I got to see all that little stuff in between. And then any time I had a question, Louis would always call me back. He never charged me for coming in. Heck, he lost money on me. He'd bring me in privately. Him and I would work out together. I went to breakfast with those guys. I was over Louis' house for some fights and stuff that he had on for UFC. He was a big fight fan. So it's just interesting. I got to see all the dynamics of it, but then I got to talk to him privately about this. And so I got to understand this directly from the guy. And it was amazing that. And then as I became a coach, and had track athletes coming in, you and I have different, like you mentioned about your cross country runner, you and I were able to pick and apply, or I'd ask him about, hey, this is what I'm seeing here. What should I do in this scenario? And Lou would always, help me out, let me know what's going on. People don't realize the track athletes he had from Ohio State. Butch Reynolds, Olympic gold medalist, was down there too training. Butch still brings his club people in. Louis just didn't emphasize or write about it or post about it because he didn't have an ego about that part with everything. So it was cool to see high-level NCAA champion track athletes. He had Mo down there who was on the 4x400 Olympic gold medal team as well. So it was neat to see all these athletes, these high-end coaches. The Wales, rugby team was coming down. They were staying at a lodge inn or something for like 30 days while down there. I got to see how he programmed for rugby a little bit. I got to see him pick apart and not just powerlifters, but how this athlete needs this, or this group of guys, look how they're all over here. They need this part over here. And I got to see how he was dropping times where I saw several Ohio State athletes, 100-meter dashes, who were already All-Americans. Their coach said you had hit your high level. And a lot of track athletes, like you and I were talking about coaches, is they were afraid to strength train them hard. They were just, this, or hey, just do this in the weight room, just do body weight, just, do these core exercises. Louis stopped them from running and strength train them hard, and he actually dropped times. I saw guys come in when I'm thinking, I'm a young coach, like, hey, if you're running the 40, you got to have perfect form, which you do, you got to practice it. but I saw him taking times off guys just by strength training. I saw these guys' verticals go up just by strength training. So it was an amazing concept I got to see about really how important the weight room is, especially when someone's reached a certain level, they haven't done this to the next part, how much that really helped them out, and how much of this that he goes, hey, I didn't need to run them, I dropped their time. Hey, I didn't need to do this. Hey, I dropped, I increased their height. Hey, this coach said you kind of reached your genetic potential. He goes, bull crap, and he'd take whatever tenths off their seconds for times, and they end up being top 4 in the nation instead of being top 8.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite things of after training with Louis and the group, is that he was always open to still sit down and like nerd out and talk about the science stuff, as long as you want to do that as well. Like clearly he has guys in there that don't give two shits about what it takes to put the 20 pounds on their squat or their bench press. They just want to Louis to say, hey, do this, and this is the way it's going to work. But like people like you and me, we actually want to understand the why. And that was always my favorite part. Every time I either went out to breakfast with him or sat down after training and talked to him about it, or, he was walking me through how to use the inverse curl for the first time and how to do it from a programming perspective. Like that to me was where I saw the value, at least as a lifter, was training in Westside and, doing your dynamic effort work with Louis Simmons. Yes. Iconic. I'll never forget that. But also just the information that he passed on made me make better decisions for my athletes when I was young and up and coming and trying to work with other people. I felt like it gave me a very nice edge because, again, like you said, he didn't charge for any of it. That's just how Louis was. And I think that's a testament. Anybody that's been at Westside will agree with that as well. And that's one of the things I think our field misses a lot, is that everybody just wants to like charge a nickel and dime for, a little bit of information, where the people before us would just give it away freely because they knew that it would come back later, either, for Louis buying equipment or buying his training knowledge or pushing people towards his system. That's really just the way Louis was. And I think, I'm also really intrigued that you as a teenager being at Westside, like that had to just be like eye-opening the first time you walked in the doors, right?
Oh yeah, I'm over there. I got in there early enough. I didn't know about the whole breakfast thing, but I made sure to get there on time with everything. And he's like, "All right, you're spotting and loading the first group." So I'm loading, Chuck Vogenpol and Mike Rosario. They're squatting 800 plus band tensions. They get over 1,000 pounds at the top, and I'm loading weights. I'm working the monolift. I'm changing box heights, and I'm sweating as all heck, like making sure I'm doing it right. He's just kind of throwing me in. And as a teenager, Brandon, I got to work with the girls and the lightweight guys after that. He goes, "Okay, now you can work out." Those guys broke off and they got done with their main list. So now it was actually open for us. He goes, "Okay, now you can work out." I'm like, well, I'm already warmed up. So I'm ready to start, jumping and squat and everything. So it was just neat because you come back, you process, and all we had was Powerlifting USA articles to read. So I'd come back, read those, and I'd have questions for Louis about stuff. And then once he saw that I was real serious and started putting on some decent weights, then he even paid more attention to me. And really you could see that change. Like, oh, he actually is serious. Like, no, I actually came down, or hey, I actually stayed at my friend's, couch during college during fall break because I could train at Westside for 4 days straight. And so he goes, okay, you're actually pretty serious about stuff. And that's when he brought me in. He goes, hey, it's just I'm working out tomorrow, get an extra workout. Why don't you meet me here at like 8 a.m. And it was like it was just him and me training. Like you said, we sat and talked for hours and stuff afterwards just about that and the powerlifting, but also the athlete strength conditioning. Brandon, good story. I brought Shelby Morse down there 2 months before Louis passed away. He had heart surgery before that. And then it was about 2 months before his final passing. And I brought her down. I'll give an example of a mistake. I knew there was something wrong with her training. And sometimes we focus on the programming too much. I was actually sitting her hips too far back on her sumo deadlift. I was loading them too much. And just like you only need to cock a gun so far back, you only need to pull a bow and arrow so far back. That's the max, that you need on it. So Louis actually had me bringing her hips in closer. We were still sitting back in the squat and loading it, but I kept her hips closer on there because Shelby was stuck around a 490 deadlift on a stiff bar, and we just couldn't break that 500. I knew she was strong enough, and I'm looking at my program, looking at this. It was the simplest thing was I was sitting her too far back. Her hips were taking too long to come into the bar to finish the lift. So we tightened her up. So it was like she was sitting back a little bit, but everything was really tight. Her glutes, her hamstrings, everything, she could feel good. That was the big takeaway that I needed to work on. We put that in for the next 3 weeks because we only had 3 weeks left of training before, we had to dial it down a little bit. And she goes out there and pulls 501 and pulls it easy with everything. It was just like one of those things it was a mistake that I was making as a coach, but Louis pointed it out. And I'm like, man, I was looking at all these other stuff. The simplest thing is usually the best explanation for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's kind of talk about Ed Coan. Let's talk about your collaboration with him and kind of what you've learned. I still think Ed's the GOAT. Will he get passed over by somebody? Maybe, but I mean, just the longevity and I think everybody just thinks Ed's the GOAT. I love Ed as a person from when I've got to talk to him. What have you kind of taken away from Ed and using in your powerlifting coaching and working with athletes?
Yeah, I think early on as an athlete, just when I got to know him when I was still competing, I was missing some technical sides that maybe I'd look for the strength side or the programming side or some other stuff. And it was like little things that I needed to do. Or Ed pointed out the way I deadlifted, he goes, hey, you can't switch up your form now. It's so ingrained to you, but you need to do these strength things to help strengthen up these areas. So a little bit like conjugate based, but Ed's like, you need to do these assistance exercises and you really need to periodize them just like you do your regular training to build these up. He goes, this is what's going to help you out the most on that. So I took that apart. He gave me a little technical stuff on that. And then as I became a coach, I had a seminar down here, invited Ed to come down and speak at. And, I only knew him a little bit, but he came down at this high school I was at because I wanted to, again, kick off the strength program to help some kids and really help the school system. And, he came down and ran a great seminar. So I learned a lot of more directly from him from there. And him and I just became friends throughout the year. So I brought several of my kids up, while they were in high school, like Shelby and Jenica Baldridge and a few other of my lifters that were really doing a good job and training hard. So we brought them up there, and Ed worked with all my lifters for, oh my God, it was like 2 or 3 hours that he just volunteered. We obviously took him out to lunch and took care of him stuff. He goes, hey, just bring him up here. I'll coach him in between my sets with everything. He's a big person with Jared early on too. He sent Jared down to me. I've had Jared for over 10 years now as an athlete of mine too. And then in the coaching side, the more we've done seminars, it's just he's very good at technical. So people don't realize with Ed Coan is as good as an athlete he was, the GOAT of powerlifting. He is just that good, if not, I think even better as a technical coach. He can really sharpen people up where they feel better or they'll hit a lift. They're like, oh, that felt 10 pounds easier or 20 pounds easier on stuff. And that's why him and I, when we do seminars together, it's just we give a lot of hands-on. Yeah, we'll talk for a little bit and we'll demonstrate, but a lot of it is hands-on. Or if we have coaches in the room, we'll bring them over and we'll point out what we see and how we would fix this and way behavior and give this person pause squats over here. Hey, this person actually needs some quad work, believe it or not, where we usually focus on, you and I are big on hips and hamstrings for developing athletes for speed and power. Hey, this person actually needs to work on abdominals and back. Hey, what's your bend over row over here? This is the reason why you're starting to loosen up on your bench. We can tell you to pull your shoulders back and spread your chest all you want for a good bench press, but it's honestly, you need to big up your back exercise. Well, hey, I only do this. Like, no, you should be rowing, another 50, 60 pounds for sets and reps on this stuff. So it's been good. And then obviously Ed's opened up a lot of doors for me. He knows how passionate I am. He's seen the athletes I've developed. So he's been very good about, when we've done seminars together or speaking at Swiss together and everything, like, we piggyback off each other. So it's been a great friendship. And I'll give an example. When I'm training my athletes along the way, I always call them. I said, hey, can you take a look at this video for me? Hey, I'll tell my athletes, hey, send Ed this video, tell me you're one of mine. And Ed always, just like Louis did, he takes his time, looks at that. He'll say, hey, Jeremy, he goes, what's your plan for this? I'm like, well, I'm going to do this for triples, maybe doubles. He goes, nah, he'll start having them do this instead. I had an athlete that we were struggling with her squat, Chloe Dublin, another national champion of mine. And Ed had me doing 10-second pause squats. I mean, we were literally going 1, 2, 3. She was getting forward a little bit. She'd have to straighten her back up. 4, 5, push your knees out. 6. So we actually figured up every step of the way on her squat. And Ed's like, you need to do a tempo. You need to slow it down even more because she needs to figure out every single step. So it's little things that when I'm looking at something else, he will give me a different perspective. And it always ends up turning out great for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the first time I met Ed was one of the Elite FTS Learn to Trains when I was like a attendee, and he helped me with some stuff on my deadlift because I was transitioning from conventional to sumo, and he had some good tips. And I think the one tip that he's always given me for really, and it goes for all 3 lifts that he was really big on, and I try to, when I'm around other coaches like that, if I hear a coaching cue, I try to like literally use it for a long time because I want to see, am I going to get the same results as somebody else? Because how you and I know how somebody words something can immediately make something click that, we're probably using a lot of the same coaching cues every single day. So we might sound repetitive where somebody has something else and you're like, oh, that's great. And the biggest one that he told me was always have your sternum up. And just that small thing of just your sternum up, either in your squat or your sumo deadlift or your bench press, immediately can fix a handful of other things. And it's just the simplest little cue, but it goes a very long way. And it's like the one thing that I got from Ed Coan very early on that I still use to this day, and it still returns dividends. And like you said, anytime I've ever reached out to Ed or talked to Ed, like always a very giving guy. And I think that's a testament to, again, why people still not think he's the GOAT from his career, but just like you said, his ability to just give back and immediately pinpoint stuff out like that. That's what the best lifters do.
Yep.
So kind of start wrapping things up here really quickly. Kind of tell us about the HPT seminar that you got coming up here at the end of October.
Yeah, so probably about 4 times a year, I bring all my athletes in. We run an online training platform as well. I have competitive powerlifters there. I got some higher end athletes. Heck, I even got a professional pickleball player on there who makes his living, 75% of his income playing pickleball. He's
incredible.
a D1 tennis player. Yeah, I'm jealous, man. I'm not gonna lie. But so open up to all my athletes. It's like I said, 4 times a year. So we kind of do this fall, winter, spring, summer, and I bring them all in. So Jared's comes in, Shelby comes in. But I open up to everybody else. I'll give you an example. Dave Ricks, who's another, person we need to put on Mount Rushmore for one of the GOATs of powerlifting of all time. Dave's 65 years old. He's squatting over 600 raw and drug-free still, weighing 205. Dave Ricks is going to be coming in. So it's about all of us getting together. I kind of treat it like a big family. We all kind of have breakfast together. There's anywhere between 30 or 40 of us that'll be. So not just my lifters, like some other high-end lifters will be coming in as well, too. Braden Gulch, he's one of my 900-pound squatters coming in recently. He'll be down here. So we all get together. We have a big event where we're all just training. It's kind of blocked off just for us. I will invite some of my high school kids or some of my people that are working real hard, just a free thing to, hey, why don't you come and actually see how these people train, see how they go through stuff, see how they dial in and focus on big lifts, see how they can maybe joke around in between sets when they need to, but then when it's time to go, it's time to go. Where I have some of my lifters who they're serious the whole time during that event, because it's practice for them. It's go time. Some need a little bit of a break in between, so it's interesting to see that. And then what I do, Brandon, is I open it up to the public. We have a seminar afterwards because I've got all these 30 great lifters in who are very highly decorated, but they're not just meatheads. They're actually people who understand my philosophy or have a good coaching course too. So we open it up and we just run a seminar for squat, bench, and deadlift afterwards, assistance work for athletes. I have masters lifters that come in here. Some youth people come in, high school, college football players. So I just open up to the public because I've got all these good lifters coming in. Why not hear from, Dave Ricks, who's been competing since 1981 and still at a high level doing stuff, hear from a Jared Martin, how he programs, hear from a Shelby Morse, see how these lift, get coached by, not just 1 or 2 people presenting, but get coached by, 30 of my athletes who are also some high level coaches who are in there actually helping you for multiple sets and multiple reps.
That's awesome, man. That's great. All right. So to kind of round this out, I've got like a rapid fire / like fun kind of question round, just a couple questions.
You don't worry about this, Brandon.
So the first one is, in your opinion, what's the biggest mistake in strength training?
Just general strength training. I think the technical side, it transfers so much more. You can get so much more. Brandon, you and I can run a 5x5 off anybody. And the way we coach them and help them out, it's going to set them up tremendously for later on. But if they get bad habits early on, they're going to get to a certain point and they're going to get stuck. And they're going to want to do all this other crazy stuff to get rid of it and take all these supplements and look for the outdoor ones. They need to go back and fix the basics of technique, and it transfers so much more later on.
For sure. I agree with that. All right. Outside of like the barbell, the rack, dumbbells, what's one piece of equipment that you can't live without, either as a coach or as a lifter yourself?
Besides the rack, dumbbells, I guess the basics on there. I think it's just a sled. I've gotten so much good work out of that, from having Jared just walk with it for GPP to help him out with everything, to conditioning work on everything, to being able to pull it, push it, carry it. It's just a tremendous thing. It doesn't take a lot to teach. You can put any lifter at any level. I don't care if they're an elementary school kid, middle, high school, college kid, professional powerlifter, whatever they are. It's just so versatile with conditioning, GPP, variations. Doesn't take much to teach at all. I mean, you just got to push it or pull. It's pretty simple, and you can do so much and get so much out of it.
That's great. Great answer. All right. What's your most memorable moment as a coach? You're probably gonna have a lot to choose from, but if you could only pick one, what would it be?
Oh man, there has been a lot. I would think you got to give me 2. Okay.
Okay. Two's good.
Give me 2. One is just what Jared just did recently, because his wife had passed away 2 months before he went to China to compete. And we had to make a choice with everything. And I told him he needed to move down here and be with me. He needed to get away from everything that was going on in Northern Indiana. He needed to come down, stay with me. So he moved into my place. He was down here for 4 weeks. We had a lot to talk about, a lot of stuff that we went through, both behind the scenes and obviously in the weight room too. And he stuck with the plan and everything. And that man went out there to a different country, representing the United States of America at the highest level in powerlifting the World Games and squatted that 1,020. He squatted 1,003 and 9 minutes later squatted 1,025. And then Brandon, I only had, you benched a PR. I only had planned for an 824, 832 pound deadlift. He went and pulled 848 to finish a solid second out there and earn a silver medal when he was in fourth place the whole time. So having that happen to him, making the choice to move in with me with all the stuff that was going on, following everything that I told him, I got to control everything, and him go out there and do that was simply amazing. And back in 2019, my favorite thing was with Jenica Baldridge. She had a lot of setbacks during this time with college powerlifting. She had finals and stuff she had to take the way everything worked out. She was working 20 hours a week, going to school full time. She wanted to cry almost every single day because workouts were not going real well. She refused to call me and cry, and she wanted to quit almost every single workout. Stuff was just not going correctly. And she came all the way through. And she, on her last deadlift, to win the college national record, to win the college nationals, and to set the all-time American record. And she was at Brigham Young University, Brandon. And they've had a competitive powerlifting team for over 30 years. They've never had a female national champion in any varsity sport, club sport, nothing on that end. And she wanted to quit almost every single day. But, I wouldn't let her. She wouldn't allow herself to do that. And she came through, and on the last lift, deadlifted 410 at 132 bodyweight raw, stiff bar, set the American record in the deadlift, set the American record in the total, and outdid the girl right behind her by, half a kilogram to win that all. And I just think when an athlete has that much diversity, like Jared did, like her did, they could have easily quit. They could have easily said enough's enough. Stuff was not going real well. We had not planned out the numbers she hit. That deadlift was what she needed. We had to pull. There was no other option for her to go out there and do that and be a legend and Brigham Young University and be the first female to win any national title in any sport, varsity, club, it didn't matter. For her to go out there and do that is just a testament to the person I've been able to be blessed by her parents to help raise and be a part of that journey.
Those are incredible. Those are really good stories, man. All right. Second to last one. What's one piece of information that Louis Simmons passed on to you that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, listeners out there, that's a number one thing, Brandon. I don't see what you and I did growing up as coaches, as athletes, is to go visit, go ask, go directly see those people. I had an injury and stuff like that with my lower back. Chiropractors, PTs weren't working. Louis Simmons told me, go see Dick Hartzell with the rubber bands up in Youngstown, Ohio. He will be able to fix you. And I learned the whole band system right from the man directly. I wanted to learn about, like you did, with track strength conditioning for throwers. He sent me to 4-time Olympian, our greatest hammer thrower of all time, I think, Judd Logan at the University of Ashland. And he was only 45, maybe an hour from my house. I got to learn directly from Judd on how the foreigners train for throwing events, hammer throws, weight throws, shot, disc, all that stuff. I got to ask him questions. So Louis would always point out, hey, go see this guy. Hey, go talk to this guy. Vincenello, the first guy to deadlift over 800, weight under 200 pounds. He was right in Cleveland, Ohio. I didn't know that. He goes, Louis, like, yeah, you need to go talk with him. I learned a different style of training from Vince. I learned a different how he approached certain things and how he trained mentally, which, we all hear mental toughness, but he actually put himself through mental stuff. So the biggest piece of advice was go here, call this guy, go visit this guy, go spend time with this guy. Oh, you have this. He goes, go see this master over here. So Louis would point me and I would just go see this stuff, and it opened my tremendous door. And when you asked me early on what built my philosophy, it was going to those places, going to those people. So when I did have problems, when I was on the world team, and Brandon, I wasn't, I took fourth in the world. I didn't make the award stand. I was devastated. I saw how the Norwegians were training, how technically sound they were. I went up and talked to that Norwegian coach on my own. And all of a sudden, this guy's writing me programs, sending me stuff. I'm downloading stuff to speak, Norwegian language and powerlifting. And it gave me a new perspective on how to train and how they did and what I was missing. When you think you're the hardest worker in the room, well, you're not. And it gave me a whole new perspective because I went out and did that stuff. So again, I hate to make this a long answer for you, but it was just to see this person, go visit, not just call them up, go actually train, stop in for a little bit. And when you start building those relationships, those guys, they've always helped me out more and more, just like the coaches you've had that you've been experienced with than anything else.
Yeah, that's great. I agree with that. That's the best thing that I did as a young lifter was I traveled all over the place. I went to Louis, Dave, Matt Winning, JL Holdsworth, Chase Carnes, because he was doing personal training at the time.
Will Fleming,
yeah. So I mean, like going to all those places just did me a lot as an undergrad at the time. Did me a lot of good of just going out. Social media was around, but not really to like how it is now, where you could still probably pick up a phone and call somebody, and now everybody just sends off a DM and hopes for the best. Where like I feel like if you're in a 3-hour radius. Like if you can look and find other people that are doing what you're doing what you want to do, or have been where you want to go, or are very good at what they do. If they're in a 3-hour drive radius and you're not going to do that, you genuinely don't want to get better. Because more than likely, if you just send out, hey, I want to learn more, or if you offer to pay for the time or take them out for breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever, most people in our field anyways are just going to do it for free if you have that kind of initiative. But your chances of hearing somebody tell you no, piss off, is probably going to be very, very low.
Yep, absolutely, Brandon. Can't agree more.
All right, last one. If you could snap your finger and change one thing in our industry/field, what would it be and why? It could be for the better, making something that's bad better, or just something new and innovative.
Yeah, not actually looking on paper for people's resumes, actually seeing what they've done, who they've gone around, like who have you trained with? Like you just named a whole bunch of guys on your end that you would actually go see, go train with, go learn from directly. So I see too many guys that look great on paper. They have all these certifications and this, solid level of initials like Buddy Morse states afterwards. And then I go and I actually see their weight rooms, Brandon, and it's terrible. I actually look at their Olympic lifts. It's awful. I actually look at how they're progressing on stuff and, stuff beyond the highlights and everything. If that's what they're putting out for their highlights, how are they handling like a room full of athletes? How are they not just programming out for, one or two people? So I really think that I wish they could, in our industry is actually go in and see that stuff and go above and beyond just what it says on paper. Like, let's actually see what your athletes look like. Let's actually see them all squat below parallel. Let's, walk into a high school weight room. You and I have dealt with it, like coaching the younger kids and like you said, the inexperienced kids and the ones that come in that like we talked about having to guide their hands. Like, let's see you actually bring somebody up all the way through. Let's see what results you actually have on that part. Let's see your actual development with somebody, not just it's easy to coach these D1 athletes. It's easy, yep, Brandon, when I get these high level people to come in because they're already excited. They'll do whatever you say or most of what you'll say. They want to know about this. Hey, they'll post their videos. They'll send you the feedback they want. Let's see you bring the other kids up. Let's see you do some of the other stuff on there. And I think that's a testament to what you've done to, hopefully what I've been able to try and do with all the others. Let's see what you actually develop out there.
Awesome. All right. For those listening, where can they find out more about Jeremy Hartman, all the stuff that you're doing? If they want to work with you, kind of, I guess, let us know where we can find you at, man.
Yeah. Well, if you're in Terre Haute, you go see Brandon Smedley. It's as easy as that. I love it. I'm excited to come out to your new place once you get that going and visit your stuff. But yeah, so right in south side of Indianapolis, called Bartlesville, Indiana, Greenwood, Indiana. So look up anything with Hartman Performance Training, any social media on that part. Email me, hartmanpt1@gmail.com. Send me a message on any of that stuff. We love having visitors in it at any level. I don't care, coaches, athletes, anything on that part. But just look me up, send me a message, send me an email. If you find my number online, give me a call. Like you said, I'll be happy to return your call, help you out. You want to come down and train sometime, I have an open door policy for a lot of great people that are coming to these doors here.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time. If you're listening, make sure you check out Jeremy's stuff. Again, like, he's got a lot of great things. I think I'm a little biased, but I think Indiana's a little slept on in terms of like the strength knowledge that we have in this state. I think you are a huge contributor to us having awesome strength training and awesome powerlifting performance in our state. So I appreciate all your work to do, man. And I love keeping up with your stuff. So it's been great to chat.
Awesome, man. And thanks for all you do out there I've seen your athletes and the people and the coaches you've tried to help and the sports teams that you have given more time than, like you said, you've gotten paid for or expect to get a nickel or dime from with everything. I just appreciate what you're doing to try to help those coaches, help those programs, give back to your community. So it's been inspiring. And, again, I'm excited to come out there and check out your new place, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Thank you.